Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to another episode of LLD Conversations with NCIHC. I'm going to be your host today, David Brackett. And here at the LLD Conversations, our goal and objective is to be able to unpack languages of limited diffusion together so that we can expand the breadth and the depth of languages of limited diffusion, learning from industry leaders with the hope of creating more interpreters in the industry, creating more leaders that represent languages of limited diffusion to ultimately help increase the language preservation, to increase interpretation opportunities, and provide better coverage for those who speak languages of limited diffusion. So today, it's a great privilege that we get to sit down with Gaspar Tomas, Winston Scott, and Mila Golovine, who represent a very exciting project. Here in the world, there are 7,000 languages, 7,000 spoken languages, and every month there are languages that become extinct because there's not enough individuals that are out there preserving those languages. So language preservation is a very underutilized topic and something that it needs more recognition. And it's really exciting to be sitting here with three leaders and pioneers in a very exciting project called the Mayan Language Preservation Project that is revolutionizing how language preservation is being looked at, and it's a great lesson for all of us. So really excited to learn more about the project and hear what is happening. So as we're getting started here, I have just a quick question for each of you. You can go around and share who you are, your role in the Language Preservation Project, and where you're coming from, and something unique about you that others might not already know. Winston, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you for your time today and for gathering us to talk about the exciting work that's happening with the Mayan Languages Preservation Project. My name is Dr. Winston Scott. I'm a cultural anthropologist by trade and have been working in Guatemala for about 3 decades now, conducting research, anything from coffee economics to social mobilization projects and language preservation. I don't know that there's that much interesting about me, but I will say that I am now 3 baseball parks away from completing my tour of all of Major League Baseball stadiums. I was able to hit the Miami Marlins last week and cross that one off the list. But I'm the director of the Mayan Languages Preservation Project, and so I view my role as a unifier of linguistic communities in Guatemala, and have the great privilege and pleasure to work with some amazing people.
Excellent, very fascinating. Only 3 baseball parks away. That's quite the accomplishment. How many are there total?
30.
30. Okay. Wow.
Not all in 1 year, of course.
Yeah, no, that's quite the accomplishment. All right, Gaspar, we'll pass it over to you.
Hello, my name is Gaspar Tomas, and I am part of the linguistic group of the Acateco and Canjobal of Guatemala. I am part of the the Language Preservation Project by Masterword, and I am also part of the board of advisors. I'm a member of the board of advisors for the Canjobal community and the Acateco community as well. And besides the language project, one personal experience I can share is that besides work, I also have accomplished some artworks that I have done besides work, and it's mostly dealing with like graphic design and restoring the Dresden Codex or some of the Maya codices that still exist, but restoring them with color and like with vivid imagery.
Fascinating. I love to hear that. We'd love to see that as well. All right, Mila, we will pivot over to you.
Well, my name is Mila Golovine, and I'm founder and CEO of Masterword Services, and very grateful for the opportunity to be able to support this project and work with this project. And one point that most likely the language community doesn't know about me is that my great uncle, Yuri Knorozov, in the 1950s decoded Mayan hieroglyphics, actually as part of his schoolwork, and presented that as one of his paper. And so I have a deep connection with the Mayan culture, because if people ask me why Mayan language, well, kind of grew up around Mayan language, and deep rooted connection with the culture and the history of the civilization and the people.
I did not know that either. So that's really, really cool to hear. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll start off with you, Mila, if you don't mind. What, for those of us who are just joining and learning here about the Mayan Language Preservation Project, how did it get started? What is the ultimate objective?
Well, we know, we talk a lot in the industry about how many languages there are out there in the world. But one of the numbers that shook me is that 40% of the world, people of the world, don't have access to education in the language that they understand. And yes, some languages are the bridge of extinction. There's some languages that have been pronounced extinct a couple hundred years ago, Taino language, but actually has a lot of speakers still alive today. So it's not an extinct language. And in the case of the Mayan speakers, there's, and Dr. Scott can correct me, 22 languages that are in wider use today, but somewhere plus minus 30 languages overall, but 7 million speakers. So it's a lot of speakers. And in the case of the larger languages, Quiche and Kekchi, about 1.3 million speakers each. So the same population as, let's say, the population of Estonia. But the poverty rate and the literacy rate is very low. So I think only about 1% of the people graduate past 6th grade in case of Mayan speakers. And we wanted to create the project as a roadmap to digitization, a roadmap to literacy, a community-driven, people-driven approach that, how can a community that has no literacy, no opportunities, create its own, and how can we enter into the digital world? So that's how the idea came about. And that was the crazy idea I called Dr. Scott with.
And so what does that translate to as far as what does success look like with this project at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, success looks like, so it's a long-term commitment, right? It's a long-term commitment. At the end of the day, success looks like creation of digital tools, creation of machine translation tools, AI tools, and then creation of literacy projects, and making sure that we transfer all of that knowledge to people on the ground. And Dr. Scott can elaborate more on how we work with that, and the project, because some people, they actually teared up and cried when we said we're doing that, because it's their language, right? So there was a lot of community participation in that. So success looks full digitization.
And it sounds like such a huge project to be taking on. How did the project get initially kicked off, and how many individuals are involved in the project, for anyone that wants to touch on that?
Dr. Scott?
Oh, just about 2 years ago, Mila, who I'd had a working relationship through MasterWord in various projects, translation and interpretation in the past, called me up out of the blue. I was actually getting ready to start my own mom and pop NGO, and I was thinking a lot about literacy. I was thinking a lot about writing workshops in the Guatemalan communities, how that would work, how I could get that off the ground, what it would take. But Mila called me and said, I've got this crazy idea, and let's see if our goals cross paths somewhere. And indeed they did. And she touched upon my care for preservation of languages, in particular the Cachiquel, Quiche, Kekchi of Guatemala. Not only those, because we work with other languages, which I've now grown very fond of as well, even though I have not learned to speak them yet. But our goals were crossing paths, and we thought that by creating digital resources, online glossaries that were community driven, we might be able to get to a point, as Mila talks about, over the long term, where we can see true societal change within the Mayan language speaking communities where there is more access to education. It's a real heavy lift. There's no avoiding that we don't have electricity in a lot of our communities, let alone internet. But what we are doing is focusing on the tools that people have access to, such as Android devices. Even if not every individual have one, most homes have access to an Android device, and they're using WhatsApp to communicate or looking on social media to interact with communities. So concentrating our efforts in those areas towards digitization, at the same time providing resources through interpretation services and translation services for Mayan language speaking communities here in the United States. So that's kind of how it came about, and it literally started with one Wikimedia page and me just calling every contact that I knew over 30 years, people who care about the languages of Guatemala.
And how many people are involved in the project today?
So overall, we have contributing regularly now, and this has grown since the last time we kind of looked at the data, but over 150, more closer to 160 people in the United States and in Guatemala who are contributing. And that can be anything from contributing term to the glossary, making a suggestion on a category that they'd like to see, or taking a picture. If we have a picture of a hospital that we need, for example, to go along with the hospital page on our website for the glossary, we want to have audio and visual content that goes along, that accompanies the terminology, definition, and example. So we have people that can contribute maybe once a week, once a month, or maybe 100 times a week. So it varies, but upwards to 160 people.
Wow, a large lift indeed. So Gaspar, I'd love to hear from you, from your perspective so far. What has been the response of the community, and what is the impact that you've seen so far?
So far with the project, the younger generation, the younger community is what's getting interest. They are gaining interest and trying to figure out other ways of like using their mobile devices or any type of devices that they have to use that and to actually learn or have access to the web page as well. And from experience as well and from encounters, it's mostly from the younger generation. And I have also realized that in this time we're in right now, everybody's trying to reconnect to their languages, their roots, and their ancestral identities. And language is one way to doing that. And not only the younger generation, but the older generation as well. They're also realizing that they can still do their part. They can still plant their seed so that they can also contribute to the growth and reviving the languages as well. Even if they can't write or read, they're able to like do their recordings as well.
And how have you all seen the correlation of these languages being, preserved and revitalized, translating to the development and training of more interpreters? Has it crossed that area?
It's not there yet. So we started with the talking glossary, right? Because you have to deal with the literacy rate. So we started with talking glossaries. Then we went to creating keyboards because, again, the alphabets were created. So we went from the Maya script to alphabets that were, and Dr. Scott can talk about more of that, but the alphabet was established. And now that we have created multiple keyboards for Android devices and so for Microsoft, for different applications, we're working on, we've actually just finished the first NeuroMT, because how do you translate? So working on training machine translation tools, and then also text-to-speech, speech-to-text type of applications. And we are moving into creating textbooks, literacy textbooks. So it's more the project is focused more on creating literacy in the communities. And Dr. Scott can talk more about the work we do with the schools and other part that's happening on the ground.
Well, very quickly too, I've seen a lot of improvement with the interpreters. I think that having the resources has been a great help. There are not a lot of Mayan language interpreters in the United States to begin with. There's a whole broad spectrum of issues of why that is. It doesn't mean we don't have the speakers in our communities wherever we may live, but work permissions and other things. I think that interpreters, what we've been able to do is show them that not only we hear this language matters catchphrase in different contexts, but we do want to show that language really does matter. And so without painting any of the 20 plus Mayan languages of Guatemala with a broad paintbrush, not all languages are the same, but for example, Quechua has adopted over the past decades large terminology, Cachiquel as well, neologisms, whereas Quiche maybe has not, or is just getting into the communities. But what we try to do is, one, as Gaspar talks about, show that appreciation for the ancestral language, show that there are not many ways, but are every way to express those things that interpreters need to know in terms of the terminology, no matter if they're in legal or medical or in social services or educational. But these languages are complex. They have a complex system of rules. And to make sure that interpreters show that respect to the language as they go through their work. So, for example, not just saying, well, just use Spanish. Well, that's a different language entirely. And even though in some instances it may be understood, a word such as doctor or doctor, we have all the correct terminology to do that. So one of the beautiful things about the project has been this way of not inventing words. We do not invent words, but what we do is work closely with the communities to say, what is the best way to express this idea? And when we do that, then different interpreters and translators who are on board with us, they're able to disseminate that and start using it. And it's been an incredible opportunity to see in Coban, for instance, Coban, Guatemala, where Quechua is widely spoken, the adoption, not adoption, but the realization that, yes, we can say it in this way, and that's the way it's best understood without going to a colonial language.
And what has been the biggest challenge that you all have faced so far with the project?
Well, I would say everything's been a challenge, but everything's been an incredible opportunity. You know, like, for example, we're working with the bilingual school, right? And we asked them, what are some of the needs for the school? And you would think about, supplies would be a question. Well, their number one priority is a roof. And it's a little bit difficult to operate in a roof when it rains. When we were doing recordings, one of the biggest challenging was the sounds for voice to text, text to voice, the sounds of, I don't know, a rooster or birds or that's not typical challenge. Electricity, is a challenge. So, but one of the amazing opportunities is constantly thinking outside the box. And I think the partnership, because the people really want access to literacy and we're not, in this case, we're talking about a very large group of people combined, bigger than Estonia, but Estonia is on the top economic, coefficients in Europe, and Guatemala is at the bottom, Mayan community is at the bottom economic coefficients of the world. So, and the difference is literacy, and the difference is digital literacy. So can a community, without waiting somebody to come and give them a fish, create their own fishing rod and go fish themselves? And that's what the project is about. So it's incredibly exciting. And Gaspar has been at the forefront of creating a lot of things. So Gaspar has actually many hidden talents that not just art. Sounds
like it. And it sounds like there's been a lot of other organizations that are coming in to help support, and just the idea itself. I think when anyone hears it, it's inspiring. How can other organizations get involved, and for potentially people that are listening, get involved and be able to help contribute? What could that look like?
Well, we always look for people who will contribute terminology, who will contribute with help. So if you know of for example, we're talking to an organization that actually publishes books. So we'll be looking at how can we publish books, how can we create books. Right now, if somebody wants to help with the project, Gaspar is actually going to be leading the project on textbooks and illustrations, literacy books. So can somebody help contribute? If it's a tech company, can you help us contribute licenses that we can use because we'll be teaching people on the ground in the community how to do digital illustration and how to convert art into digital illustration for the books. So we'll be looking for that. If any of the large tech companies are listening, we would love to see the products localized into the Mayan languages. And again, it's a community-driven approach, so we'll be working with the community to create that. We'd love to see all major software with some interface for Mayan languages. And somebody just wants to donate office supplies to the school. We don't buy them in this country. We want local economy to thrive as well, so we'll source them locally, but that is also welcome.
And you touched on large tech companies. How have you leveraged AI technology in the project?
We are trying to create those tools for that. The entire library or corpora fits into a carry-on suitcase. So there is no corpora, there is no digital presence. So the challenge here, it's one of the most challenging projects because we're having to create it. We are working on building AI tools for the Mayan languages because the community is going to be faced with not just translating one thing, but translating everything. So potentially this will be a roadmap how a community can leapfrog from having no digital presence to, all the way to AI. But all of these tools are being created simultaneously.
And is this a model that you see that can be replicated for other languages? And is that the goal as well?
Absolutely. We're hoping for it, but we're also learning from other communities, and we're collaborating through the Decade of Indigenous Languages with other communities, and we are looking at who else found a solution for something. Can we use that solution? Can we share our solution? So we just attended the LT Language Technology Fall Conference, where a lot of exchange happened in terms of information and knowledge. And absolutely. And we'll be sharing. This is an open source project. The roadmap is going to be shared through the decade with other communities as well, as we're learning from them. There's a lot to learn too.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of moving parts. I can only imagine. So as we're getting close here to time, I guess another question that I have for any of you is, let's fast forward 10 years from now, and we're sitting here having this conversation. What would the project look like 10 years from now if you had the crystal ball?
I think Gaspar is the best person to answer that.
Okay.
From 10 years, I personally see that the project will be on an international, not just like between Guatemala and the United States alone. It will be on more of an international level among beyond the Maya borders. And I feel like that would be the best way to put it, because technology is forever changing, and the languages and the audience and the interest that is being shown to them right now, it's just going to improve. It's not going to decline. It's just simply going to improve. And as time goes by, we're going to bring in the more interest that will grow, and the more talents will be uncovered as well. Because like I said, right now we're basically we're placing the first pebbles. We're placing the first pebbles to like securing it, but later down the road it will be steady and it will be accessible. This material that we're collaborating with like other communities, it will be accessible among all the people.
It's very, very exciting to think about, and I just want to again commend each of you for your individual efforts. I know there's a large group that's not here on this call that's also included, and so thank you to all of those individuals who are helping the nearly 160 individuals who are collaborating to make this happen. This kind of project doesn't happen on its own, and it's great to be able to learn a little bit more about the project. Final question for each one of you, if you can answer, is just what would be your final message or inspirational thought that you'd like to leave with the community?
Dr. Scott?
If I could only pick one message to leave with the community, I'd say keep on working towards the goal of preserving your languages. 30 years, I've met some amazing men and women, old and young. They're inspiring. One of the biggest challenges is to see that reality and transmit that reality. I think that a lot of times, in particular in Guatemala, there's a feeling of to get ahead in life, we must leave our languages behind. And I know that to be the case. And so the overall goal, and where I would see this in 10 years, is that there's advanced participation across the language communities, and for those community leaders to continue to inspire one another as they've inspired us and continue to inspire us to preserve their languages, because there's not just economic value to be considered. That is one point of consideration so that people have employment opportunities, but the cultural value is so integrated into language. And so my message would be keep speaking your languages. They're beautiful. They have value beyond compare.
Well, my message would be is just quoting, was it with Dory the fish? Just keep on swimming. Just keep on doing one step at a time. Nothing is impossible. Everything's possible. Impossible just takes a little bit longer. And so sometimes just doing it. And I like to see where very often we feel like, oh my God, who's going to help us, right? Who's going to save us? Is the government going to come? Is the education ministry going to come? The other people going to come? But sometimes all it just takes, and that's what we want to set an example of, is working from within a school, from within a village, and just adding one word at a time, creating a full digital presence. I think that's going to be really empowering. And the project, when we said it, was just like perfect. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars to build a large language model. Well, we don't have money. We don't have COPRA. We don't have literacy. Perfect. Let's do it. Figure it out for the way.
Incredible. Gaspar, what about you?
I feel like I have two, but the main one right now is for the parents of the younger generation here in the States and sadly in Guatemala as well, that learning English or speaking Spanish to the kids doesn't necessarily mean that's a priority to speak English or Spanish. And most parents tend to still hold that mindset that their kids will never be successful in life if they do not grow up knowing English or Spanish, and that tend to lead them to forgetting their actual mother tongue. So that's a message for the parents, is to stay away from that and to actually embrace the language with the kids, learn it, teach it to the kids, And for the younger generation growing up, especially here in the States, embrace it. Don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed to like represent who you are. Embrace your language, your culture. And another one is that our language not only it doesn't only exist by oral, it also exists in textile and woven clothing. So that's another thing our great grandmothers would do, is that they would weave their language, their stories in textiles. So that's another thing for the younger generation to keep in mind as well. Be mindful of that and keep on learning and have motivation to understanding and learning the languages.
Wow. Well, thank you so much to each of you for coming here today, for joining us, and for sharing your story and a little bit of more of the Mayan Language Preservation Project story and goals. It is truly an inspiring project, and hopefully those who are listening in are inspired to help share their message, or get directly involved yourselves as well, because it's truly needed. This doesn't happen with one small group. It takes a large village, and we want to see this kind of work continue, and not only just for this project, but hopefully inspire others to start other similar projects as well. What an incredible thing that would be. So thank you again to each of you. You're truly an inspiration, and we just encourage you and give you all of the strength that it needs to continue on the journey that you're on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.